This media is brought to you by Polyscope.
In the realm of tomorrow, where techniques mind, we ponder, we dream.
Good. All right. Thank you so much for joining us here on Think Future. My name is Chris Kalaboukis, and once again, we're coming at you live from deep in the heart of Silicon Valley, California. Today, we have a special guest. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, so my name is Lee Winter. So you can find my writing on Substack at the moment. I tend to just write a couple of musings about things like psychology, soul, creation, kind of whatever strikes my heart at the moment. For business, I mainly do sales on the side. It's kind of just a passion project that I work at on as far as Substack. You can also find me on X, formerly Twitter.
Do you spend a lot of time on X?
Not really. I used to. Yeah.
Is there a reason why you don't? I mean, a lot of people try to stay away from it because they feel it's politically volatile.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Yeah, the For You feed is hell earth. It's absolute hell earth. That's one part of it. And when I got back into it too, it seems that at the moment it's hard to take off on X and get any sort of traction over there. So, and I knew people were already using Substack. I was already reading articles over there. And it seemed like it was a thriving platform in the spot for long form. So started there around October of last year.
Mm-hmm. And so what is it that drew you to Substack? Was it the other writing on there, or is it the ease of use, or what was it?
It's a combination of both, because I had this idea that I should probably have my own newsletter. And, there's all these different newsletter platforms like ConvertKit, and I'm sure there's a ton of other ones out there. And Substack seems to solve a lot of that, where you can just have the email problem solved. I can just kind of focus on the writing itself, put out whatever when I feel like it. And that was the major draw for me, is I just didn't have to worry about too much of the back end stuff.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about your newsletter. Like, what do you talk about on it? What do you focus on?
Yeah, so I've been on a variety of topics. So some of them have just been the nature of psychology. I've written a couple ones. I think my original one that I started on there and I kind of built off of was The Little Death Unrealized. And it's kind of like some of the stuff that you talk about too, which is the idea of reinventing yourself, about, kind of salvaging the pieces of who you were and who you're becoming.
Interesting. And I think the thing that got us together was a conversation on trust, right? I think you made a really interesting point when it came to trust and the erosion of trust on the internet. And maybe you can go into that in a little more detail.
Yeah, so if I'm remembering correctly, I don't remember the post anymore.
Same thing. It's going to be like, there's just so many interactions happening. It's like, it's hard to remember that specific one.
Yeah, so it's just where I have to, anytime something insightful comes, even if it's just a reply to someone, I usually put it in my notes somewhere. So it's somewhere there, I'm sure. But I did write an article on this called The Post-Truth Reality. And I kind of find that's where we're heading, is a sort of post-truth reality, because we've already passed that threshold where any writing you see on the internet automatically cannot be assumed to have fully originated from whoever the author is.
Exactly.
It could easily be AI written. There's certain things you can look for. The typical cliches. It's not X, it's Y. That's how it's real. There's a couple of ones that usually allow me to spot them. But it's not always tried and true. So that's part of it, is that you can't really be sure that this is something that they originated. And the result of that is there's just way more noise on the internet now, way more than what you would have seen before. You would have a couple, pretty heavy writers, and you'd have an idea of what their real voice was. And now we're passing the second veranda, which is now AI video is reliably able to deceive most people. I think that the big one that strikes me right now is if you go on YouTube and you just look up animal videos, a big trend that's coming up on there is people do AI animal videos. And that's a little bit harder to spot as far as the uncanny valley, right? It's a way easier to do like an AI fox, AI cat, whatever the case might be, as long as they're not doing something absolutely batshit insane, right?
Something very human, right? Like driving a car or something like that. For sure it's it's AI.
Yeah, yeah. So in any like a more mundane context, they're completely believable. And so we have entered this era where anything you look on the internet, you don't know if it's real, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're reasonably confident, there's always a kind of tiny doubt.
Yeah, because I mean, there's tells. There's absolute tells. Like if you've worked with AI for a while, you can absolutely tell when something is AI. There's certain structures, there's certain phraseology, and you don't know if the entire article was written by AI or whether some of it was written by AI, but you can see the tells, and then you think to yourself, like, how am I going to deal with this? Now, personally, I think that if something touches you emotionally, like if it has an intended effect, whether AI generates it or human beings generate it, it doesn't really matter, or a combination. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm in agreement with that. I think
Mm,
I've seen this in a couple different spaces. So I've seen it among writers, and I've especially seen it among artists, is that everybody's trying to say that AI automatically, if you use AI in your writing, or you use it in your art, whatever the case might be, you use it in your creation, then it automatically loses the soul of what it
right.
is to create. And I'm not convinced of that. I think that the problem that you run into with AI is it's trained on an average. It's
Mm,
trained on lots of different people with lots of different opinions on what is good taste, right? And the result of that is AI has no taste. Now you can prompt that
right.
and you can personally curate that and you can bring your own
You
judgment
take
to
good taste
forbear.
and bad taste and put it together, and then you end up with no taste.
Yeah, no taste whatsoever. So that's another reason, like if you get with a lot of these, regardless of whether you're using Claude, using ChatGPT, or you're using Gemini, whatever your preference is, you're always going to find that on a certain level, it does have a tendency to just automatically gaslight you and just
Hmm.
agree with whatever you say to it.
Yeah.
Again, you can prompt around that, but that is something you have to be mindful of. And when we're talking about creating stuff, yeah, so that's where I would say there's real potential for great creators to do some great things. There's going to be more noise, and it all just comes down to leveraging human judgment.
Yeah, I think that the one of the things I really like about AI is that it allows people who don't have the skill to do something. Like they have a great idea, but they don't have the skill to express this idea. It allows them to express that idea. I mean, it could be a shitty idea, it could be a great idea, but it allows them to express it, and they don't need to get over that hump of skill that they need to develop. Like they don't need to learn how to write, they don't need to learn how to paint, they don't need to learn how to use Photoshop. They can just, blah about the idea, and AI will generate it for them, and then they put it out into the world. And it could be great or could be bad, but at least it gets out there. So I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, immensely. And to your point too, there is a certain class of artists that I always, and there's a certain class of writers that are this way too. But there's a certain class of artists I refer to as like glorified rose drawers. And I'm sure
Mm.
like a lot of people will get angry at me for that. But there are certain people where they're just like they draw roses, right? That's their
Hmm.
whole thing, and they do it exceptionally well with just almost photographic levels of detail. And there's no doubt that they're skilled. But as far as the creativity, I begin to question that, right? At the end of the day, they're just doing a rose over and over and over and over again. And I think that's the type of person that gets displaced the most by AI is people who aren't really, they're just really good at like the technical art of generating a certain image.
Yeah, so they're more technicians or craftspeople than they are artists,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. And like, can you give me an example? Like, are you talking about specifically in graphic art or also writing?
Yeah, so art comes to mind. That's the first thing off the top of my head, and I bring that up because I feel like every time I've always like ran into someone or another, or I ask them, they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" And they're like, "Oh, I do art." I'm like, "Oh, what's your art?" And it's like a bunch of roses and a bunch of skulls. All right, and the first time it's
And
pretty
it's
neat,
beautifully detailed and
but
highly
then
skilled, but it's the same thing.
yeah, and then I see that like 10 different people all doing that, and it gets a kind of a little bit boring. And
Mm.
that's kind of where I see it. So what's nice is that you do have people who have taste. I think you're going to see a lot more curation is going to become incredibly important to producing bodies of art because there are people now that can take the ideas out of the head and they can put them into prompts. And the problem that's always been is regardless whether you use Midjourney or you use like Nano Banana, which just came out with a new model, there is a certain lack of precision. I think you can get close if you're prompting, but there's always going to be a level of editing is still needed. Like if I do art, I'm usually starting with Midjourney or I'm starting with Nano Banana. And then if I have little edits that need to be made, I go and I pull up Procreate on my tablet and I do it manually. And so
Right.
there's still going to be a certain level of editing that is necessary, a certain level of creation that's necessary. And same thing with writing, I think it's regardless of whether we're talking about art or writing, it should be AI assisted, probably not AI in
Mm.
entirety. And no matter what, your judgment there is going to be important.
Right. Because just putting the prompt in isn't enough, right? Because you could give it a super lean prompt and generates most of it, and it just like you said, it'll get to that level of zero taste, and then that's what's put out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I find too is here's where we're at the moment, and this could just be a skill issue on my part. But what I find at the moment is I'll have a certain image inside of my head. I'm like, I want to produce something that looks like this,
Hmm.
and I can maybe get 85% of the way there at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe 95% if I get exceptionally lucky, and it does feel like a little bit of gambling sometimes with the outcomes, because every once in a while I'll see something, I'll go, that's it. It just needs a little bit of tweaking here and there, and we're in a good spot. But it's never 100%.
No.
I think
No.
there will be people who will get there, but I
But
haven't found it to reach 100%.
do you like very detailed prompts or light prompts?
I like really detailed prompts. Yeah, I like
Mm.
the like really go. Now there's a certain point where if you get too heavy with the prompts, that it just goes
It doesn't.
haywire, and
It's
you
like
feel
talking to
like
an
nothing's
intern,
really
right?
helped.
I can't
Yeah,
do that. I don't have that level of
it's too
skill.
much. And I'll tell you what helps immensely, just to allow me to do lazy prompting, is like if I am doing image prompting, for example. One thing I will do is I will start off with like Claude, and I'll tell Claude like the sort of image I'm trying to create. I'll just describe it in plain language, just like I were writing
Hmm.
and I were describing something, and then have it create a prompt for me that I can then use for like Midjourney or Nano Banana or whatever I'm using. And this
Yeah.
does allow me to use like a natural language and natural writing style to create the prompt, and I get really good results from that. Another
Yeah.
thing I do is you can also take an image with an art style you like, and same thing, you can have Claude dissect the details to get that particular sort of art style. And with like things that I've hand drawn, I've done that to extract it, and it doesn't get all the way there. I can't say it's ever like replicated anything I've drawn perfectly, but it does a pretty nice idea of at least capturing the spirit of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's close enough, right? That's where it all ends up being. I think the
Yeah,
writing's like that too. It's kind of like somebody would put a prompt in, get an article out of it, and they read it, and they're like, well, this is probably good enough. I could go in there and make some edits and make it more me. But in general, people just think, well, this is good enough, and then they just put it out there, whether or not they check for accuracy or anything like that. And I think that leans back to sort of your post-truth society where people don't really check if the output is real, right?
yeah, I don't think so. I think there are some things that stand out to people. Like you'll see pushback every once in a while when someone sees something that's just obviously AI, and there are certain things out there. I think that's a big reason why people weren't using like ChatGPT in like 2023, 2024 to write a whole lot, or
Right.
at least
Oh,
like
it was terrible back then.
yeah,
My
it was
God.
horrendous. Something changed obviously within the last 3 to 6 months, I would say. But yeah, for a very long time, it was very bad. And some of
Yeah.
your prompts can still be bad because again, it doesn't have a voice per se. Or
Mm.
I guess I should say, Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini, they all do have a voice. And if you put in no prompts and you just put it in a very generic, hey, write something about this, it will do that, but it won't really have any flavoring to it. And what ends up happening, and this is what I suspect is going to happen, is over time we're going to see 70% of the internet will be authored by the same voice.
Right. Well, I think it's already at 52. I think I
Yeah,
read somewhere that 52% of what's out there has already been either generated by AI or assisted by AI. So we're already in like a post-human
yeah.
post-human space.
And then don't get me wrong, like if you do some excellent prompting, like you can play around with it. If it has enough data, it can copy just about any syntax, any lexicon you can think of. A really fun thing you can do is just like have it mimic the style of H.P. Lovecraft, and then
Yeah.
throw any inane ideas through it, told in that lens. And especially Claude does an excellent job of it, and it's so much fun. If you've read enough H.P. Lovecraft, you can kind of tell you're like, wait, this isn't really his story, but it's pretty damn close.
Yeah. Well, I tend to, so I have a blog. If you, and plus, if you have a lot of your own material for like previous own material and you fade that up there and say, hey, replicate my style, it does a pretty good job of getting close to what your style is like. And you can still tell that there's a transition, but it's fairly seamless if you're not thinking about it too hard.
Yeah, it's nice, and especially the more material you get out there, you can replicate it. That's kind of how I look at my notes at the moment. Is every day I sit down, I'm writing, and I'm mostly just dumping into a whole note log based on the date. Yes, journaling more or
Hmm.
less, and then I do to dump that into the Claude and use it to feed my information. What I find it is it's best for is to serve as an editor. So I just
Mm.
put enough of my own writing into it so that it's very familiar with what my writing style looks like and what sort of word choices I use and kind of what my rhythm is. And then I use it to help edit like voice notes that I'll do. Because when I write, it's a little bit different than I talk. There's some
Hmm.
similarities here and there, but there's just a whole lot more time to kind of think and deliberate on the phrasing when you're writing. So other times I'll record a voice note and then I'll just run it through Claude and be like, edit this, make certain you don't inject any of your own wording, just delete things when needed, rearrange things to make certain it has coherent or narrative sense to an outsider reading this for the first time.
Mm.
And I find that lately it's done a really good job.
That's good. So you really do have to give it instructions because if you don't, it's just going to go off on its own and do its own thing.
Yeah, yeah, because it's just it can be everything, and the
Mm.
consequence of that is it can also be nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about this post-truth stuff. Is it worthwhile for us to even care that something is truthful or not, or should we just assume that everything is false?
I think it's more important whether something's useful or not.
Mm. Mm.
Like that's
So the
something we,
truth and the falsity of something does not necessarily matter.
yeah, not necessarily. If the information is useful, that's
Mm.
all that matters. And this goes a long ways. I'm a big believer in, like, for example, placebos. People talk about it like, oh, you got to be careful of placebos. When I'm thinking it's a mechanism that's been shown to undo any disease, produce incredible results in humans. It can replicate practically any drug if you push the edge on it far enough.
Mm.
And so having useful beliefs, regardless of their veracity, is more important. And I think that's going to become increasingly true in the world that we're heading into, is just kind of running everything through that lens and be like, is this true? Well, you don't really have a way of knowing.
Right.
But
And
is
then you
it
have to decide
useful?
whether or not it's useful to
Yeah.
it's useful to for it to be the way it is.
Hmm.
Interesting. So you don't see expect like some kind of flag come out because they were talking about putting in indicators saying, well, this is AI, this is false, this is true. I mean, truth in itself as a concept, you can't get too close to that because it's not nothing is 100% true, right? Because it's basically
Hmm.
a consensual hallucination where we're all agreeing, yeah, that seems to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, consensus reality is what you're looking at. It's like we all agree that this is true, so this is true. Yeah, and there's tons of things that are very difficult to demonstrate how true they are. Like the majority of history, for example, right? I wrote a post today about this in particular, kind of relevant. Is like if you want to go back and you want to study like Rome, for example, what would probably be a good resource is to write about the people who were actually there at the time who did read about it, like Polybius, for example.
Hmm.
But even so, that's been watered down through whatever his biases were. He referenced his own historians who knows how true what they wrote was. You're relying on the translation, and so whatever liberties the translator took necessarily waters that down further. And then after that, you get about as close to the truth as you can. And there are some historians that leverage that and they go to the sites to kind of put together more of a picture, but I don't think we ever really have anything that's 100% true. And that's always been the case, since we were being taught in school. You always hear like history is written by the victors, and there's probably a lot of stories we've been told about the past that aren't 100% true. They're
Mm.
probably not even
Or maybe it
90%
didn't even
true.
exist at all.
Yeah,
May
or
never have
maybe
happened. It could have
it
been a
may,
complete falsification.
yeah, it may have been a complete falsification and a useful myth that constructed the modern society we live in. And so, it comes down then to that usefulness of information, and that's where we'll continue to find ourselves is like we really gotta put a focus on what is useful for
Mm.
constructing the life you want, and constructing the temperament that you want. Because I think if you get obsessed with trying to determine whether something is true or not, especially within the coming years, you're going to have a really hard time.
Yeah. So what do you think about these assertions where somebody like Elon Musk comes out and says, I want the most truthful AI? I mean, can you even say that something is truthful in that regard?
It's hard. I think I know where he's getting at is like trying to get down into here's what would be the closest thing to truth for me is like if an event happens and the closest thing to truth of that event would just be like a candid video camera of the event happening, unaltered, unedited, um, unbothered, just the pure raw footage of whatever the event happened. That's pretty much the purest truth that most people will get over the internet.
Hmm.
A greater level of truth would be having being personally there, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, it would be descriptions, yeah, as sterile of a description as possible of that event, in words that accurately describe it without getting too far into metaphors or similes or exaggerating anything. That's kind of how I would define truth. And I think that's what Elon is trying to get at. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, Elon has his own biases, right? So there's certain things that he probably that would be exaggerations that he would allow, and other things that he wouldn't. And that's where I find, like, if we're talking about truth, that would be the lens I have for it. Preserving that lens is very hard.
Well, in fact, impossible unless you're there in person,
Hmm.
right? There's really no way to know that video was unaltered. You just have
Yeah,
to trust that the video was unaltered.
yeah, absolutely. And then, even if I was there and I related to you, who knows if I'm a reliable witness or not? I might be exaggerating things. I might be misremembering it. I might recolor the events through my own biases. And as I think about it more, I suddenly remember things,
Yeah.
things that may have happened, things that may not have happened. Uh,
So
and
we're kind of already in a post-truth society. We've been in a post-truth society ever since we left our tribes, we left our villages,
mhm.
kind of.
Yeah, yeah, we have been, and it's only going to get a lot harder to discern what the truth is. I think, we've tried to fix this in a lot of different ways, right? For a long time, one way we try to fix it is like, did the mainstream media exist for a reason? Journalism exists for a reason, because
Hmm.
that was the first attempt to correct it. Now, I do think that system got co-opted, and that's not reliable as
Oh
much
yeah,
as it
not
used to be
not at all.
either. Yeah. And so you can't really look at that as a reliable source, but that was the solution. I think we're trying to come up with new solutions now. And I think it's going to be very hard. I think maybe if AI can detect if something is AI video or is AI generated, that would be the first step. But yeah, it's going to be hard. I don't
Hmm.
to really determine what is real and what isn't. And again, if you get obsessed with it, I think you'll go mad.
Well, I've noticed an interesting trend in stuff that AI posts on social media that it tends to get more views than what humans have created. Do you think there's some kind of interrelationship between the algorithm detecting something about the content that makes it clearer to the AI so it understands how to classify it better? Or have you seen anything like that?
I think AI content is just effective. Is what
Mm,
it boils down to. We may not like it, but it's effective for catching attention. Like, because you can have it develop the perfect hook. You can make just all wild, insane things happen throughout the video. You can control the pacing perfectly. Just all of it's generated from practically nothing. So I think that's the part of it is it gets people to look at it. It gets people to
right.
click, and the algorithm rewards that. Now, is it good for us? I don't know. If I think the only answer to that is if you want to put good content in front of other people, is you got to not be boring. That's
Right.
the only answer because you're competing with something that is very exciting and absolutely knows how to
Interesting.
capture people's attention.
So the algorithm that sees the AI content really leverages the humans liking something. So let's say, for example, I post something that I generate a note with AI and I post it. And anything that I use AI to post tends to get more views than anything I just write myself. And I always thought it was because the AI looked at it and said, "Oh, well, I completely understand this, and I know who to show it to." So not necessarily humans looking at it and liking it, but AI looking at it and going, "Oh, I get this," as
Hmm.
opposed to, I can take this apart and understand it better than I can take apart something that a human created.
Yeah, and I don't know what your prompts are too when you're typing that in, because there is certain content that, especially in short form, is just going to do better. Like,
Mm,
if you have a hook, if it's digestible, if it's a list, if it stops a scroll in some way, that's all effective content. And this is stuff that you can algorithmically sort through. Also, if it's just like a pithy, generic truth, that tends to get a lot of likes from people because they agree with it. It's very easy to put a like. I guess my question would be is like which is getting more engagement, your raw human content, or is it the AI content? And by
mm.
engagement, I mean like people actually leaving replies and forming a conversation in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one gets more likes, and the other one gets more engagement. So I think that I'm sticking with the human stuff.
Yeah. I guess so there's just like a certain voice that stands out. I think one advantage that we have of our human writing and then the things that we create as humans is we can't help but make mistakes. We
Mm,
we cannot help ourselves but mess up. We omit words, we make grammatical errors, we misspell stuff, we introduce biases, we make logical fallacies. We do all these little mistakes, and an AI would never think of doing unless you deliberately commanded it to do it. The worst an AI does is it just sounds redundant. And that's
yeah,
just because we've all seen the voice pattern over and over and over and over again. And
yeah.
after a while, you can kind of detect that. But the things that humans do very well is being human, and I think that's going to be the valuable capital in the future.
Yeah. Speaking of the future, it's time to think like a futurist. So it's the year 2036, 10 years from now. Where do you think we're going to be? Do you think we'll actually have social networks? And I know there's a few experiments in this space where there really are no humans and it's just AI talking to AI.
We might get there. It's just a possibility. So here's what I look at. It's because AI didn't really take off until what? It wasn't really meaningful exist until like 2023. We saw some
Yeah.
whisperings of it a little bit before that, but like 2023 was a big year, and look where we're at 3 years from now.
Yeah. It's
So
ridiculous how fast things are changing.
yeah, so if I look at your timeline, 2036, it's about three times as long, right? That's
Hmm.
another 9, 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, so baseline, you can assume that it would triple in progress, which I can't even comprehend what that would look like, right? I imagine it would easily be surpassing humans in every single metric by that point.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
definitely won't be able to determine what's real by that.
Oh yeah.
And I
That's probably
know,
coming this year, actually. I'm thinking
yeah,
that might be this year.
yeah, I think
We,
I think so. And I know that tech doesn't work that way either. Like tech only accelerates; it only gets faster. So, and we already have information from Claude. Claude is already using like Claude code to improve itself as something, or maybe that was ChatGPT. I heard that from. It might have been Codex, but they're already using it to self-improve the model. Now, I don't think we're at AGI yet, and I don't know if we ever will be, but it's going to get to a point where what we have today will look like child's play. Just like the way we looked at 2023 is probably the way we'll look at this year. I don't even think 10 years from now, probably 1, 2 years from now.
yeah. Yeah, well, I have this sense that content will just disappear in its current form. Because what will happen is that AI will automatically create content for you to match whatever mood you're in at the moment, right? So
Mhm.
instead of me going to Spotify and picking out tracks to listen to, it will just create music for me on the fly in the style that I want at the moment. So all that content will just disappear. I don't even know if that's 10 years out, but I'm thinking that we'll get to that point where I'll be scrolling Substack and every single article that I'm looking at will be written specifically for me on the fly based on what I feel at the moment. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, that could happen. I could easily see that happening. I don't. I think what will come first before that is you will get human curators who are very
Mm.
good at doing that for you and curating a certain creation and providing that to you. Maybe AI will get there eventually. The problem is it does require lots of data. Now, thankfully, for those of us who are chronically online, which is just about all of us these days, it has lots
It's
of
got all
data to
that data
work with.
already.
Yeah, it has lots of data to work with. And I think people are getting less and less qualms about feeding their information to AIs. You know, there used to be a big privacy concern, and now people are using LLMs as their therapist and telling
Oh
them
yeah.
all their
Well,
deepest, darkest
the
secrets.
usefulness blows that all over. It's the same thing with almost everything. It's like as soon as you hit a certain level of usefulness, people will give up everything
Hmm.
because they go, "Oh, what I'm getting out of this is absolutely worth more than what I'm putting into it."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I kind of had this thought to myself one day too. I was like, maybe I should try to preserve privacy. And the more and more I look at the future, I'm like, I don't. In the future, I'm not even sure it's going to be possible to be anonymous if you want to.
Yeah.
Like I think it'll be very easy to suss out the patterns. There'll probably be people with the ultimate OPSEC who can just manage that and just ensure that none of their personal information is on the internet. But I think for the average person, like if someone wants to find out who you are, AIs will be able to sort that pretty quickly just by the public information you put out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this has been great. Thank you so much. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
You can reach out to me on Substack. I'm mainly there these days. It's at Winter Ouroboros.
Ouroboros. I love that. What inspired you to use Ouroboros as part of your brand?
Yeah, so it was a long time ago. It was kind of a winter where I was feeling like a little bit down, and I kind of saw that everything worked in more or less that cycle, like a
Mm.
winter cycle, a winter Ouroboros. Uh, this is before like kids were saying winter arc or like winter arc or whatever. And I always loved the image of like the snake biting its own tail and this just idea of like persevering throughout the winter and becoming stronger from that.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I'll put the links in the show notes so people go direct. Thank you.
Thank
Talk to you
you.
later. Have a good one.
See it. You too. Bye. Bye.
Pixels and philosophies merge and mold, a future untold, unseen.